Mind control in the United States. 1. Introduction. The most effective method of protecting yourself from the subconscious. The goal of manipulation is to understand how it works. Stephen Jacobson, author of Mind Control in the U.S., is a film technician experienced in subliminal techniques used for communication. Media. Subliminal perception is a deliberate process that was created by communication technicians, which you receive and respond to. Information and instructions without being consciously aware of them. Instructions. Scary, you can bet your life it is. And as Jacobson explains in this book, what is going on in America right now? Mind control in the United States is an introduction to the history of subliminal communication is practiced. It outlines mental principles. Programming, that an initial distraction must be followed by repetitive commands, and it explains how these concepts are implemented. Furthermore, the book indicates when and where it has been used. Jacobson's examples include in Flight Motion Pictures, Inc., and its onboard films. To general audience movies such as Reefer Madness, The Exorcist, and The World Screams as It Dies. The effects on audiences are depicted graphically. The case of the film The Exorcist is particularly fascinating. William Peter Blatty, author of the book and producer of the film, is a former CIA operative. Blatty had a lengthy career in government psychology. Manipulations. One has to be pretty naive to argue that there is no relationship between Blatty's CIA career and his communication techniques. Similarly, subliminal techniques have been applied to radio and television. Current research has focused heavily on extrasensory perception, ESP. The meditation and marijuana are both used to induce altered states of consciousness. Out-of-body experiences appear to be better documented, as research has progressed far beyond popular belief. Who is responsible for this intrusive experimentation with free? Are there individuals in a free society? Author Jacobson provides example after example of identifying the so-called the Eastern establishment, which includes the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, and other various elitists as the primary source. Even at the White House level, deception was used not only by Richard Nixon, the master deceiver, but also Presidents Johnson and Carter. Reagan was also involved. Every large advertising agency, at the corporate level. I experimented with subliminal manipulation. Finally, deception has been used to mask the pervasive erosion of our freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. Unfortunately for us, George Orwell's 1984 was released on schedule. What is? Alarmingly, very few citizens realize that deception is already a part of social framework. We're not aware that 1984 has already arrived because we've been taught not to know. Similarly, the media has caused inner turmoil in citizens through the representation of violence, chaos, and irrational behavior, the inner self. The chaos of the outside world reflects the state. What action can you take? Hopefully, this book will improve your understanding of skepticism toward the establishment and its representatives. Less. Clearly, you have a duty to freedom to discover the truth and spread it. Truth. Mind control in the United States will be extremely useful in this endeavor. At a minimum, you will know who and how they attempted to brainwash you. 2. In the year 1984. In his book 1984, George Orwell warns that people are in danger of losing their human qualities and freedom of mind without being conscious of it while it. This is due to psychological engineering. We have learned to Expect the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China to use mind. Control over its citizens, but not the free world even so. Techniques are used in the United States, the most effective method of. To protect yourself from subconscious manipulation, you should be aware of. It works. The techniques used to enslave and free the mind are the same. 3. Principles of mind. Programming. Captivating a man's mind is the most effective way to conquer him. Control A. You have control over the man's mind, as well as his body. The majority of people do not pay attention to what affects them subconsciously. They typically do not know what to look for. When these things are pointed out, they can be recognized and comprehended. Mind control principles, hypnotic suggestions, and mental programming is ancient. The terminology is irrelevant. The principles are the same. The goal is to suspend conscious thought processes. Mind to create a state of mind similar to daydreaming. Stop. The mind and conscious thought are in their most suggestible state and are more. People are more open to programming now than ever before, so the first. Distraction is a key mind control principle. Distraction focuses the attention on the conscious mind on one or more of the 5 senses, sight, sound, and touch. Smell and taste are used to program the subconscious mind. All men don't have the same thoughts, but they all think with the same. The mechanism in question is the brain. One part of the brain works things out one at a time, like a computer. This is the language-useful left side of the brain. It is also known as the conscious mind, the tools of consciousness. The mind is made up of words, spoken, written, and thought, images, and sounds. The conscious mind discriminates, evaluates, accepts, and rejects. There are times when the more you think about a problem, the farther you get from finding a solution to it. When this happens, you make decisions based on your feelings. I did not arrive at my understanding of the fundamental laws of the universe through my rational mind, said Albert Einstein, won the abilities of intuition. The powers of the subconscious mind, the right side of the brain, center for intuition, creativity, and emotion. Luke, use the force. All living things produce an energy field known as the force. Believe your feelings, not the computer. The force in Star Wars is the Hollywood version of an ancient principle. Think of your subconscious. The mind is your link to the force. Think about your subconscious mind as a personal source of energy. Imagine your conscious thoughts directing this energy source and obtaining power from the force. This is the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious. What the subconscious acts on what the conscious mind believes. It's like programming a computer. You feed information into a computer, which acts on it. However, if the information you feed into the computer is incorrect, it will take action. If you give yourself inaccurate information, or if others give you, the memory banks of your subconscious mind do not accept incorrect information. Correct the error, but then act. When you stop conscious thinking and make your mind go blank, mind is in its most suggestible state. This is the state of mind in which are the most open to mental programming. This mental state is only like daydreaming. Now remember the first principle of mental programming. That is the principle of distraction. Distraction focuses the attention. The conscious mind uses one or more of the 5 senses to program the subconscious mind. The same principle applies to all illusions and magic. Also, there is propaganda. Repetition is the second fundamental principle of mental programming. Distraction and The process of learning is represented by repetition. Picture yourself studying in school. You're studying a book. Your gaze is directed to the page of the book. The words on the page provide a conscious distraction for your eyes. The information you're reading is directly programmed to your subconscious mind. You're not consciously analyzing the material, reading until you take a break from the page to reflect on it. It's at this point, you have the opportunity to analyze the data you just read it and accept it as true or reject it as false. If you accept the information true, it is programmed into your subconscious mind. If you reject the information that is false, is programmed into your subconscious mind. However, if you are unsure whether the information is true or not, something happens. Your trust in the source of the information decides whether you accept the information. If you don't believe a book may include false information, intentionally or unintentionally, then you would accept its information as true, even if you weren't sure. I couldn't figure it out. This is especially true in school when there is pressure. Accept what is presented as true, because that is what is expected. It determines your grade and future. Repetition of the information embedded it in your subconscious mind, so that your acceptance of the truth, accuracy, becomes conditioned. This information is accepted as true. When you see it again, you don't think about it. For music and its power, consider when a song made you sad. It may have. I was moved to tears. You may have felt it as a change in your stomach. There is muscle tension. Music has long been recognized for its power. History. Plato and Aristotle believed that people could be controlled through music. It has an effect on your physical, mental, and emotional states. Sound alters body chemistry, blood pressure, breathing, and digestion. Even sounds that you can't hear have an effect on you. Low frequency, infrasonic sounds affect your internal organs and can cause headaches, nausea, and dizziness. Fatigue is another factor. Fast music speeds up the nervous system, whereas slow music will cause it to slow down. Your whole body is sensitive to sound. Sound vibrates in different areas of the body. Low tones will vibrate in the lower parts of the body, and high tones will vibrate in the higher portions and further into the head. Jimi Hendrix, a rock legend from the 1960s, once said, "You can hypnotize people with music, and you can preach into their weakest point." Their subconscious, whatever you want to say. Much of today's rock music is based on a louder bass pattern than the melody. These loud, low-frequency vibrations and the driving beats of most rock music affects the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland produces hormones that control the sexual responses of males and females. These low-frequency the music feels because vibrations vibrate in your lower body. Good. It is important to note that many rock songs have unclear lyrics. Conscious distinction. Now remember, your subconscious mind hears. All mental programming occurs when a message is repeated. As per research, that repeated hearings, whether sought or not, yield acceptance and even liking. When you do not hear the message clearly, you cannot make. It is a conscious choice to accept or reject it. When you can't make that choice, when that option is removed from you, the message is programmed directly into your subconscious mind without you knowing it, thus accepting the message's content without analyzing or choosing it. The effects of this type of programming will become apparent over time. The following effects. They can be physical, psychological, or emotional. Most people don't paying conscious attention to things that affect them subconsciously because they do not know what to look for. However, when these things are pointed out, are recognizable and understood, research has shown that the subconscious mind, capable of reading mirror images, even upside-down mirror images. This also applies to words that are spoken or sung backward. This phenomenon is called backward masking. The Beatles began using backward masking on Revolution Number 9 appears on the White Album. The song says number 9, number 9. When played backwards, it becomes Turn Me On, Dead Man. Rumors spread around the world. Paul is dead. The album Magical Mystery Tour contained material about Paul's death. Last few beats of the song, Strawberry Fields. A low-volume voice says, I buried Paul. 2,000 years ago, Plato demanded strict censorship over popular music in his utopian republic. In Nazi Germany, the government used music to create a mental state in the German people. In the Soviet, a state commission determines the type of music to be heard. If music was such a powerful tool for control in the Soviet Union that used in the same way in the United States and around the world. Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran's leader, imposed strict restrictions on music, broadcasting and banning certain types of music as a threat to his rule. In Orwell's 1984, music is tightly controlled due to its ability to communicate and influence human behavior. 5. TV, radio, and movies. Watching television frequently induces an altered state of consciousness because the television screen appears to be static, but it actually flickers. What causes? Will you enter a state of altered consciousness? The body relaxes during hypnosis, and a meticulously patterned voice roll. The hypnotist speaks to a regular beat, as if matching his words to a metronome. Actually, any repeating light or sound pattern can lead you into the hypnotic state of mind, a state where mind maps are similar to daydreaming. This is the altered state of consciousness. Consider the times you have caught yourself staring blankly. I lost track of time and place while staring at the television screen. When you've stopped conscious thinking and your mind goes blank, then your mind is at its most suggestible condition. You are most receptive when you are in this mental state. To cognitive programming, consider how often you have seen flashing words appear in both local and national TV commercials. The flashing words are the conscious distraction for the eyes, while the eyes are preoccupied. The message being delivered is directly programmed into your subconscious mind. Anything that is consciously perceived can be evaluated, criticized, discussed, argued about, and even rejected. Any information programmed subliminally for your subconscious mind encounters no obstacles. The subliminal information is saved in your brain with an identification that triggers a delayed alarm. The clock reaction has the potential to influence your behavior. On June 22, 1956, the BBC experimented with subliminal images are projected on television. Images were flashed on screen too quickly to be seen consciously, but they did leave an impression. On the subconscious level, subliminal perception is the process through which you receive and react to visual and sound information without being aware of it. The message in the form of written words, images, or voices is presented so quickly or faintly that you are not consciously aware of having observed or heard something. The BBC experiment was succeeded by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation conducted a similar experiment, projecting subliminal images. Televisa Mexico's commercial TV. The radio network has extensively experimented with subliminal broadcasting techniques. In the United States, TV station WTWO in Bangor, Maine carried out. An experiment was carried out in November 1957. Experiments were not restricted to television. In 1958, radio station WAAF. Chicago showed subtitle commercials. Seattle's KOL broadcasts barely. Its disc jockeys play music with audible taped messages below it. How about a cup of coffee? Was one, and someone's at the door was another. James Vickery, a marketing researcher and psychologist, tested subliminal advertisements in a movie theater in New Jersey. Hungry, eat popcorn and drink coca. Every 5 seconds, the word cola was flashed on the screen at a rate of 1/3000 of a second. During the film, popcorn and Coke sales increased. On December 8, 1972, the New York Times reported that In-Flight Motion Pictures, Inc. would start selling subliminal advertisements embedded in the movies would be distributed to all major airlines. Stores in the country is reducing theft by an average of 30 to 50% by broadcasting subliminal messages like "I will not steal." Stimutech Inc. of East Lansing, Michigan promotes a computer video system that displays subliminal messages. While you are watching regular programming on television, you will see messages. A team of psychologists creates subliminal messages to influence the viewer's thinking patterns and behavior. Using what was called the pre-con process, the picture of a skull and the word blood was flashed subliminally on the screen in the movie My. The world ends with a scream. Some words and images evoke strong emotions. People react in various ways. Laboratory experiments show that people will react to words like blood and images of skulls with a quickened pulse, faster. Breathing, sweating palms, and other signs of intense emotion. The Exorcist used both subliminal sounds and images, several times. During the movie, Father Kara's face became a 2-frame, full screen. Wear a death mask. There are 24 frames of motion picture film projected per second. The death mask flashed across the screen in 1/48 of a second. The unnoticed word pig appears frequently throughout the movie. The terrified squealing of pigs slaughtered was subtly mixed into the soundtrack, the buzzing noise of angry, agitated bees woven. Throughout the film, both in and out of scenes occur. Many people actually fainted. Many more became nauseous in varying degrees, a large number. Many more people had disturbing nightmares. It is interesting that William Peter Blatty, author of the novel and producer of the film, is a former CIA agent who was the policy branch chief of the the U.S. Air Force's Warfare Division, based on previously classified documents. The CIA tested subliminal manipulation in movie theaters. In the late 1950s, the Bruce Lee Kung Fu film Game of Death demonstrates how easy it is to influence what the audience believes, while Bruce Lee is billed as the star. Throughout the film, an actor impersonates him. Camera angles can be selected. Try to hide this. Close-ups of Lee from other films are used to provide. Throughout the story, it appears that Lee is present. The distinction. The changes in color in the background of these close-ups reveal the technique. This film was put together with skillful editing, leading up to the climactic fight sequences filmed with Bruce Lee. The foundation of film art is editing, wrote the Russian film director Pudovkin's preface to the German edition of his book on film. Techniques. Lev Kuleshov performed an experiment at the Moscow Film School. By combining the faces of one woman, I got the impression of a single actress. The torso of another, the hands of another, and the legs of yet another. And The anonymous British film technician is quoted in a front-page article in As stated in the London Tribune on August 5, 1949, we claim that with judicious cutting and an adroit use of camera angles, it is simple to make a fool. Anybody. We can distort the emphasis and meaning of ministers' speeches, not only by cutting out statements, but also by simply using long shot, medium shot, and close-ups. Any statement made in close-up is given more. There is more meaning on the screen than one can say by a long shot. There's no end to. We can play tricks with simple devices. Some of the most impressive footage of the San Francisco earthquake and the fire in 1906 was fabricated. Newsreel companies frequently held events at the time. In the Mexican Revolution of 1914, they made arrangements with Pancho Villa to fight his battles in daylight and waiting until the cameras were in place. Before unleashing his attack, most of the newsreel coverage of World War I was forged. Literary Digest published an expose in its November 13, 1915 edition. Issue: The practice of fabricating scenes of celebrities by employing the March of Times screen magazine regularly used impersonators. Known instances of content production, recreation, personality, impersonation are documented by Raymond Fielding in the American Newsreel. On October 30, 1938, men from Mars invaded Earth. Not really, but many people assumed so. New York Times, Monday, October 31, 1938. Thousands of radio listeners were overwhelmed by a wave of mass hysteria. Last night between 8:15 and 9:30 p.m. throughout the nation, when a broadcast of a dramatization of H.G. Wells's fantasy, The War of the Worlds, thousands of people believed that invading Martians initiated interplanetary conflict, widespread death and destruction in New Jersey and York. We are prepared to believe almost anything if it comes from a Howard Koch's book, The Panic Broadcast. Koch wrote the radio script performed by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on CBS. Thousands escaped from a crisis that existed only in their minds. Imaginations, 6 hypnosis and reefer. Madness. Hypnosis is the power of suggestion. The power of suggestion is the strength of belief. It is a faith-based act. The conscious mind cannot be controlled by the suggestions of others when those suggestions are contrary to your own experience. However, the subconscious, the mind is susceptible to suggestion-based control. Subconscious mind has absolute control over body functions, conditions, and sensations. Suggestion can cause perfect anesthesia. Hundreds of instances are recorded where surgical procedures have been performed without pain. 2. Patients have been hypnotized. Symptoms of almost any disease can be produced in subjects are hypnotized by suggestions. Partial or total paralysis can occur. Fever can be brought on, with all the attendant symptoms, such as quick pulse and high temperature. In 1936, a movie used hypnosis to give the audience instructions to take action. That film was Reefer Madness, shown widely on since 1972, on college campuses and at midnight screenings throughout the country. Reefer Madness employs sophisticated hypnotic techniques to encourage marijuana use and the promotion of anti-marijuana legislation. Speaking to a PTA meeting, high school principal Dr. Carroll commands, "Marijuana has been labeled as the assassin of our youth by parents." When Dr. Carroll starts to speak, raises a sheet of paper in front of him and reads, "Certain facts are derived from it. The white sheet of paper prominently displayed in the screen is a distraction for the eyes, which causes that state of mind that is just like daydreaming, while information is programmed for the audience. Verbally, Dr. James Braid discovered that by placing a bright object ahead the subject's eyes and causing him to gaze upon it with persistence, he could be led into a hypnotic state of mind. Dr. Carroll delivers his lines with a hypnotic rhythm that is punctuated by changes. Pacing, volume, and tone, much like a hypnotist, Dr. Carroll talks with authority. This is a technique used during hypnosis. Authoritarian techniques, also known as paternal techniques, employ a strong. The approach is commanding and dominating. Dr. Carroll looks into the camera. Another hypnotic technique is to gaze into the audience's eyes. Picture yourself in. Imagine you're in a movie theater, and a massive face on the screen stares at you. Two-frame flashes are another hypnotic technique used in reefer madness. In various locations throughout the film, these flash frames generate a corresponding a wave in the brain. These flash frames anchor information from the sounds. Keep track of your thoughts. These flash frames emphasize the information on the soundtrack emphasizes the importance of the information. Dr. Carroll slams it. To emphasize a point, I frequently put my fist on the desk. This abrupt explosion of sound anchors information in your brain. The added sound cue creates the information is crucial. There is also a scene with a swinging hypnotic pendulum. Reefer Madness's stated intent was to eradicate the threat of marijuana causes acts of shocking violence, ending often incurable insanity. In contrast, young people are seen having a good time, smoking cannabis, partying, dancing, kissing, and retreating to the bedroom. By demonstrating young people having a good time smoking, Reefer Madness encourages young people to try marijuana at least once. By confusing marijuana with heroin and telling the story of normal kids, Reefer Madness scares older people as they go berserk from marijuana into demanding action. Why there are conflicting messages. In the film, why was hypnosis used in this film and at such a high? What is the level of sophistication? The answers are contained within the movie. You government men have got to find some way to put an end to it. Dr. Carroll is furious. The government official responds, "Of course I agree with." Hello, Dr. Carroll. However, do you realize that marijuana is not like other forms of dope? It grows wild in almost every state in the Union. As a result, the drug has almost no interstate commerce. As a result, the government has limited options. Honestly, the only sure cure is a widespread education campaign. Some words elicit strong emotional responses. People react in various ways. The word dope is one of them. This word is. The soundtrack makes this clear, though we are told that marijuana is not. The association, like other types of dope, has been established. Harry Anslinger was the first U.S. Commissioner of Narcotics. He served for 32 years and was the United States representative to the United Nations. The Narcotic Drugs Commission. In his book The Murderers, he wrote that about his campaign against marijuana. By 1937, under my direction, the Bureau initiated two critical steps. First, a legislative plan to seek from. Congress passed a new law putting marijuana and its distribution in jeopardy under federal jurisdiction. Second, on radio and in major forums, I informed of this. An evil weed found in fields, riverbeds, and along roadsides. I wrote an article for magazines. Our agents gave hundreds of lectures to parents, teachers, social, and civic leaders. During network broadcasts, I discussed the growing list of crimes, such as murder and rape. One of Harry Anslinger's articles appeared in the July 1937 issue. The American magazine's title is Marijuana Assassin of Youth. There are. The content of this article and that of the film Reefer Madness. For example, the article states, in 1931, the U.S. Narcotic Bureau's marijuana file measured less than 2 inches thick, whereas today's reports fill many large cabinets. Now compare. This is similar to what was shown in the movie. Dr. Carroll is with the government, who says, "Let me show you something." In 1930, records on marijuana in the Washington office of the Narcotics Division barely filled a small folder of this size, less than 2 inches thick. They fill cabinets today. The camera shows us a file cabinet-lined wall. Howard S. Becker's book, Outsiders, describes how the Federal Bureau of Narcotics under Harry Anslinger created the marijuana problem in order to cause. The public must demand legislation, a bill that grants the federal government. Representative Robert introduced legislation in Congress to regulate marijuana. L. Doughton of North Carolina, chairperson of the House Ways and Means Committee, on August 2, 1937, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed. On October 1, 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act went into effect. Propaganda is designed to draw the public's attention to specific facts. The whole art consists of doing this so skillfully that everybody will be. In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler states that he is convinced that the facts are true. He describes the principles of effective propaganda. It must be targeted at the emotions. It must be limited to a few points and must repeat those points. Repeat until the public believes it. Propaganda should be effective. All thoughts and decisions must be constantly short-circuited. It must operate on the person subconsciously, the principles that underpin the big lie. Propaganda uses the same principles of mind control, hypnotic suggestion, and distraction to divert attention away from true information and direct it. Pay special attention to false information. Repetition of false information imms it in your subconscious mind so that your acceptance of its truth becomes a conditional response. You accept the truth of this information. When it is presented to you again, you will accept it without hesitation. There is a large amount of misinformation about marijuana, much of which, beginning in the 1930s with the so-called educational campaign, the Federal Narcotics Bureau, propaganda is not just intended to influence opinions and attitudes, but also to prompt action. The government's propaganda suggests that public opinion demands what the government already has decided to do it. Official reasons provided by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics for its opposition to the use of marijuana shifted completely during 1949. 1950, from the claim that use of marijuana led to crime and violence to the claim that marijuana use caused heroin use. When questioned, Congressman John Dingell of Michigan testifies before the House Ways and Means Committee whether the marijuana addict graduate into a. Commissioner Anslinger replied, "No, a heroin, opium, or cocaine user. Sir, I haven't heard of such a case." In 1955, Anslinger appeared before a Senate subcommittee looking into the trafficking of illicit drugs and testified that marijuana can lead to heroin addiction. During congressional hearings in 1937, Dr. W. C. Woodward, legislative, the American Medical Association's counsel, pointed out that there is no competent primary evidence to support the claims against marijuana. only newspaper accounts about growing marijuana addiction. Marijuana promotes crime. The news accounts were planted by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. There are 17 articles that condemn marijuana. From July 1937 to June 1939, 10 either acknowledged the Bureau's assistance in providing facts and figures, or gave evidence of having received help by using facts and figures that appeared in Bureau publications or in testimony given during Congress hearings. The Bureau's influence can be seen in these articles. The Bureau initially reported atrocity stories which were repeated. The same stories appeared in Reefer Madness. 7. Information control. People can be tricked into believing something that isn't true. True when such information is meticulously timed and presented by an accepted and regarded authority. The brain processes information in a specific manner. At the base of the brain, a check valve called the reticular activating system that screens data, what appears to. This occurs when new information is introduced and compared with previously acquired information and then cataloged. Whenever the information is necessary, it is retrieved and brought into conscious awareness in accordance with need. If there is no file for the piece of information, one is created and updated as new information becomes available. If you accept it, information is cataloged as true. If you reject the false information is labeled as such. However, if you do not know, trust in the source of information determines whether the information is true or not, determines whether or not you accept it, even if you aren't sure. I understand it. All power is built upon secret knowledge. The source of information depends on who you are and your social status. The source of information determines the dependability of what you know. Everything that you know is determined by the reliability of what you know. Happens to you. Information is also controllable. Words can be informative or misinform. Controlling information has the potential to influence how people think. The primary form of oppression in Orwell's 1984 is absolute control of information. All published materials are constantly changing, so history fulfills the government's wishes and objectives. Who controls the past? Ran. Who controls the present controls the future, according to the party slogan. Past. E. Merrill Root's book, Brainwashing in the High Schools, delves into. From 1950 to 1952, 11 textbooks on American history were used at Evanston Township High School in Evanston, Illinois. None of these textbooks clarifies that the U.S. government is not a democracy, but it is a republic. The Founding Fathers define the form of government. They established a constitutional republic, not one of these textbook lists. The word republic appears in the index. These textbooks interpret U.S. history primarily as a clash between rich and poor, haves and have-nots, privileged and unprivileged, which is economic determinism, the essence of Marxism, where the triumph of the common man is progress toward a more perfect people's democracy. Each textbook follows a similar trend. The reviewed was advocacy of a world government where global commitment is preferable to national interests, promoting world socialism and big government. Introductory Psychology, 2nd edition, a college textbook. Jonathan L. Friedman, is published by Addison Wesley Publishing Company. Contains misinformation, contradictions, and falsehoods. This book uses mental programming principles to program the student to accept false information. This text was used for general psychology. Course 221, at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, fall semester. 1982. According to this book, hypnosis is a state of consciousness caused by entrusting oneself to another person and characterized by increased suggestibility, acceptance of distortion, selective attention, and comparable symptoms. Part of this definition is correct, but the remainder is misleading and incorrect. To begin with, it is not necessary to entrust yourself to another person. Produce a hypnotic state of mind. Dr. James Braid demonstrated that fixing your gaze on a bright object can induce a hypnotic state. Object. In fact, any repeating light or sound pattern can lead you to that. A state of mind that is similar to daydreaming, selective attention, increased suggestibility. Acceptance of distortion exists only when you are given distorted information and are unaware that it is distorted. Information. Typically, the term symptoms refers to disorder or illness. The hypnotic state is a natural state of mind. Is not an illness or a disorder. This book completes its discussion of hypnosis saying, although there is little evidence that anybody has used the possibility of using hypnosis for evil or unpleasant purposes exists. U.S. intelligence officer Charles McQuiston claims that Sirhan was. Robert Kennedy was hypnotically programmed to die. Dr. John W. Heiss, Jr., president of the International Society of Stress Analysis, investigated Sirhan's psychiatric documentation and interviews. He thinks Sirhan was. Sirhan kept repeating certain phrases while hypnotized. It was clear that he had been programmed to enter a trance. It is possible to distort and change someone's mind through a variety of hypnotic sessions, says Dr. Herbert Spiegel, a hypnosis expert. It can be described as brainwashing because the mind is cleared of the old. Emotions and values are replaced by alternative suggestions. Behaviorally modified agents, also known as zombies in the intelligence community, individuals who have been subconsciously programmed for a task. This is what the second edition of Introduction to Psychology says about. Some people who talk about brainwashing seem to believe that it involves extremely powerful techniques that are almost irresistible. However, there is no evidence that suggests the existence of any such methods. In fact, the attempts at brainwashing that we are aware of, we weren't particularly successful. It is interesting to note, while more papers have been published on subliminal perception than on many other single topics in psychology, the space given to the subject in most general. There are few or no textbooks available. A general state education is a mere construct for molding people to be exactly like one another, and because the mold in which it casts them is that which appeases the dominant power in the government, it establishes a despotism over the mind, which naturally leads to one over the body. Said John Stuart Mills, education is used to condition children to what follows, thus eliminating the distinction between propaganda and teaching. Propaganda cannot be effective without education. The human mind is conditioned by vast amounts of information masquerading as facts, and knowledge is dispensed for ulterior purposes. The educated intellectuals are the most vulnerable to propaganda because they absorb the most amount of second-hand information and consider themselves to be above the impact of propaganda. The Winston-Salem Journal, published on August 22, 1982, contains a story from the New York Times News Service titled "Some Experts Doubt the Power of Subliminal Messages." amidst claims and counterclaims for the power and. Despite the widespread use of subliminal techniques, there is limited scientific evidence accumulated to show the existence of either. A group of psychologists are now questioning the notion that people can be influenced in any way by messages they do not consciously see or hear. Recall that propaganda diverts attention from accurate information, and false information should be addressed. Keep in mind that your trust in the source of your information will determine whether or not you accept the. Even if you are unsure or do not understand the information, consider it true. Thomas Jefferson stated, "The man who never looks into a newspaper is better. He who reads them is more informed than he who doesn't know anything. He who has a mind full of falsehoods and errors is closer to the truth." The article concludes by quoting Charles F. Adams speaking for the Americans. In 1981, the Association of Advertising Agencies declared, "We are convinced that there is no subliminal advertising in America today." Every major advertising agency in North America has sponsored extensive investigating subliminal perception. In 1957, Vance Packard wrote the Hidden Persuaders revealed that the U.S. industry was researching the uses subliminal messages to persuade customers to buy their products. Wilson Brian Key has published 3 books exposing the widespread and the advertising industry employs sophisticated subliminal advertising strategies. Even children are exploited for financial gain. When you sell your product to a kid, when he doesn't get it, he will throw himself on the floor, stamp his feet, and cry. You can't get a reaction like that out of an adult. Research on children begins as young as ages 2 and 3, using the psychological techniques of finger sensors, eye tracking, and brainwave recordings. The advertising in the United States agencies have exported commercial subliminal techniques throughout Western Europe, the Far East, and South America. It is fascinating to note that J. Walter Thompson, the world's largest advertising agency, was H.R. Haldeman's former employer, and a half-dozen others implicated Nixon. White House aides during the Watergate scandal. 8. Language manipulation. In 1984, by George Orwell, manipulating language is the key to controlling the people. Over time, a new language emerges to better serve the goals of the ruling elite. Newspeak redefines words that were once universal meaning, making it increasingly difficult and eventually it is impossible for people to communicate ideas that are not sanctioned by the government. Traditional definitions are eliminated while new meanings are created. Repeated until it is accepted, language is used to hide truth and dignity and absurdity. In addition to demeaning language, the practice of doublethink is instituted. Doublethink is the acceptance of two contradictory beliefs are held without realizing that it is illogical. In the end, the party would announce that 2 + 2 = 5, and you would have to believe it was unavoidable that they would make this claim sooner or later. The logic of their position required it. The Vietnam War produced many examples of government newspeak, including doublethink. Bombing missions were described as protective reaction strikes. The refugee camp transformed into a new life hamlet, and the American invasion of Cambodia was classified as an incursion. During Nixon's administration, newspeak and doublethink were rampant in the White House. Ron Ziegler, the press secretary, contradicted previously made statements, called his previous statements inoperative. Criminal acts occurred under the cover of national security and executive privilege. Nixon aides, abused their power through an excess of zeal. As in 1984, lies were the truth. The truth was actually a lie. The Winston-Salem edition from February 11, 1984. The journal includes a story from United Press International titled, State Department removes killing from reports. The word killing has removed from State Department human rights reports. Officials elaborated yesterday that the government considers it more precise to say illegal or arbitrary deprivation of life. The January 1984 edition of Reader's Digest contains an article titled 1984. I'm here, where is Big Brother? Most would have us believe that George. 1984, Orwell's classic novel, is a portrait of contemporary America. Nonsense. The December 10, 1983 edition of the Sentinel contained an Edwin M. Yoder, Jr., of the Washington Post Writers Group wrote an article entitled 1984 Fantasy Year Could Never Be Otherwise. None of Orwell. Imagined nightmare materialized. The nightmare of the entire human conditioning is still only an ominous fantasy. From 1984. The party told you to ignore your own eyes and ears. It was their final and most essential command. Common sense tells us that one must first gain the trust and respect. Deceive people. We frequently have the illusion that we have complete control of ourselves and the contents of our minds and psyches, and it's this illusion that allows us to be manipulated even more successfully. Most people don't exercise intelligence and critical faculties in evaluating the enormous amount of they are constantly bombarded with information. As a result, they abdicated there. They are responsible for whatever happens to them. Nonetheless, responsibility cannot be discarded so easily and for no cost. Those who expect to reap blessings of freedom must, like men, bear the fatigue of supporting it. Thomas Paine expressed himself, once freedom is lost, it is extremely difficult to regain. History has demonstrated that when people do not accept responsibility for their lives, there are those who will take it for them, and eventually from them. 9. Monopoly of the media. The nearly total monopoly of mass communication is generally one of the most distinguishing features of totalitarian dictatorships, writes President Carter's National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski's book, Totalitarian Dictatorship and Autocracy. Brzezinski goes on to say that even though the government controls all of in a dictatorship, the government doesn't always have to own all means of communication. Without mass media, no effective propaganda. To coordinate propaganda, the media must be concentrated, the number of news agencies decreased, and monopolies for the press, publishing, radio, television, and film are established. Only through concentration in a few hands of a large number of media be an orchestration and continuity of propaganda and the application of scientific methods for influencing the general public. The campaign against marijuana that led to the Marijuana Tax Act illustrates such coordination. The media is used for psychological manipulation. The motion picture industry is a prime example of the trend towards ownership concentration in the media sector. Since its inception, the film industry has been characterized by repeated attempts at dominance by a small number of companies that have traditionally either to exclude others from the business or to deprive competitors resources. The dominance in the American market is carried overseas by the major corporations and has cultural, social, and political implications. The American films sparked international demand for American goods. After WWII, the film industry and the government collaborated for worldwide distribution in order to create markets for American products. U.S. made films account for half of the box office receipts in France, and more. England, West Germany, and other countries were involved. Eddie Murphy was actor of the year for Le Matin, a Paris daily. Michael Jackson was the #1 singer. European radios play up to 80% American music each week. Huggy Bear hears Starsky et Hutch speaking in Street Parisian. Magnum Hearts and Charlie's Angels are just a few of Europe's television stars. In Iceland, Soap was 1983's top show. We have colonized their subconscious, observes American novelist Paul Theroux, hypnotically programming large populations, particularly in economically underdeveloped nations, educates the poor to desire things they cannot realistically have, causing anxiety and resentment directed not only toward their government, but to the United States as well. Many countries are rebelling against this culture. The invasion of the American media. At American bases in Germany, people protest missiles while wearing Coca-Cola t-shirts, says Alfred Metzgershamer of the Institute for Peace Politics, near Munich. Wendell L. Willkie, the Republican presidential candidate in 1940, was. In 1942, he was appointed chairman of the board of 20th Century Fox Film Corporation. William P. Rogers, Secretary of State under Nixon, was on the board of directors of 20th Century Fox before the Denver oil tycoon Marvin Davis purchased the film company in June 1981 for $722 million. Former presidents Gerald R. Ford and Henry Kissinger have both been on the 20th Century Fox's board of directors are currently consultants to the film studio. In 1982, Henry Kissinger became an. In 1977, he worked as an ABC News consultant and NBC consultant. Former Vice President Walter F. Mondale served on the board of Columbia Pictures Industries, existed before the Coca-Cola Company, based in Atlanta. In June 1982, he purchased Columbia Pictures for $751.6 million, and former Secretary of State Alexander M. Haig, Jr., sits on the board of directors of MGM, UA Entertainment Company. 10. Mental programming. Media outlets. During both World Wars, motion pictures were a powerful propaganda tool. Wars. In 1917, German Chief of Staff Erich Ludendorff wrote, "The war has demonstrated the superiority of photographs and films as means of communication and persuasion." Lenin regarded cinema as the most significant of the arts, molding the sentiment and intelligence of the. One of our political problems is the masses, and for this purpose, we use movies. Sergei Eisenstein, a Russian film director, said, "Most effective. Art is a way of seeing, and what we see in art defines what we consider to be reality." The major political issue in the United States at the end of the 19th century was to find a way to assimilate the enormous numbers of people who came from all over Europe, bringing their diverse traditions. Psychological standardization proved to be the solution. This was achieved by creating the American way of life, as depicted by American Dream. This also had an economic impact. Mass production requires widespread consumption. Mass consumption is not possible without the majority of the population having identical views about what constitutes life. Requires certain things. Without psychological consistency, advertisements and other forms of propaganda could not predictably manipulate the public. D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation exploded on the screen in 1915. It sparked conflict in almost every city and community where it was played. Radio. The broadcast of the War of the Worlds created panic, reefer madness, encouraged marijuana use as part of a propaganda campaign that led to The Warriors, one of many gang films, was followed by an outbreak of violence in cities across the country. Approximately 28 people died playing Russian roulette. Reaction to watching The Deer Hunter. The media reported that John Hinckley, Jr., informed his attorneys that the plan to assassinate President Ronald Wilson. Reagan approached him after seeing Taxi Driver, a report issued in 1982. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, violence on television. Children and teenagers who watch that can exhibit aggressive behavior. Programs. Brandon Stoddard, president of ABC Motion Pictures, called The Day After the most important film ever produced. Among the most talked about programs, The Day After is one of the most graphic depictions of the devastation of a thermonuclear apocalypse in Lawrence, Kansas, and the agonies of survivors, and the breakdown of society in which law-abiding citizens emerge. Rubble, loot, rape, and pillage, broadcast weeks before the scheduled. The deployment of American Pershing II missiles in Western Europe, produced. For realism, the made-for-TV film Special Bulletin. In Charleston, South Carolina, terrorists explode an atomic bomb. And sounds exactly like a real newscast, like the radio broadcast. The cast of characters in War of the Worlds includes the anchorperson, S. Correspondents reporting from the field and outside experts were brought in to comment on new developments, despite disclaimers, a rerun of Special. The bulletin prompted numerous calls to stations across the country from people who wanted to know if it was true. Psychotherapy techniques are widely practiced and accepted as a means. Methods of controlling people are used in addition to curing psychological disorders. They can be used systematically to influence attitudes and behavior. Systematic desensitization is a method used to dissolve anxiety. The patient public is no longer disturbed by a specific fear, a fear of violence, for example, a progressively more graphic portrayal of violence in the movies and television desensitize the viewer, especially young people. 2. Real-life violence. People adapt to scary circumstances if they have been exposed to them sufficiently. Implosive therapy has the same objective as desensitization, instead of gradually reducing a specific fear. This technique is intended to cause an internal explosion, implosion, of anxiety, terrifying the patient public as much as possible to burn out the object of fear. Thus, The Day After and Special Bulletin could depart. Many viewers were paralyzed by a sense of hopelessness and helplessness that they may succumb to deep apathy with regard to anything that has to with the possibility of a nuclear conflict. Who can forget about Close Encounters of the Third Kind? The extraterrestrial being's 5-position, hand, gesture, and greeting. The human contingent at the landing base, and the emotions that welled up inside. A sense of pride that we are somehow part of something that is much bigger than we ever imagined. Communication relies. Actions, postures, movements, and expressions all play an important role. Consider the past. To the times when you had a conversation with someone and had the gut feeling that you were being lied to. Words do not always communicate truthfully, and there are things that communicate more. Words, meaning comes from the sound of someone's voice and the body. Language. There are many methods of faking body language to achieve. And authors of books about self-improvement and how to make friends. Influencers recognize the significance of body language and the significance of faking it correctly and ensuring social success. Politicians. I've learned how important it is and how to use it properly, no matter what. John Kennedy stated that a few gestures and proper posture captivated his audience. Lyndon Johnson's arm movements were always overly studied. Mannered. Nixon's gestures were so rigid and exaggerated that they led. They find themselves in a comical situation. Jimmy had his shirt sleeves rolled up. Carter tried to show that he was at ease with ordinary people by saying, I will never lie to you or mislead you, unlike Carter. One veteran speechwriter left Carter's campaign, saying, the candidate and the campaign was the complete opposite of what it appeared to be. NBC News. Reporter Roger Mudd noted that Senator Gary Hart appeared to try to imitate the late President Kennedy. Rev. Jesse Jackson is a successful orator using an evangelistic tone, metaphors, and rhymes. His palm. His gestures are deliberate and add emotional depth to his words. It should not be overlooked that President Reagan has extensive training as an actor. Ronald Reagan is known as the great communicator by the media. Politician, who is a real actor, a man who began his career by convincing radio audiences that he was at a sports event, when in fact he was reading off, creating a ticker tape machine, and inventing its details. Consider the way newscasters speak, and you will realize they all speak in the same way, regardless of ethnicity. Whether black, white, Hispanic, or Oriental, they all sound the same. Newspeak has become a language pattern associated with the true, accurate information is disseminated. Consider the laughter tracks that have become a necessary component of television comedies. They educate the audiences to respond to something funny. The audience has been programmed, because of the evil, associate a resonating low monotone voice. The behavior of movie and television characters with that vocal quality. Emotions can be evoked, attitudes and states of mind revealed by nuances of tone and vocal quality variability. The camera can reveal the smallest details and definitions. Popular actors, past and present, are role models for the audience to admire and emulate, promoting a standard. For the behavior, the public has been conditioned to accept stereotypes that categorize people and professions. Verbal and nonverbal communication has been identified, defined, and reduced to usable code. Senator Gary Hart described the incredible power of network television. It's a very frightening thing if you think about it long enough. A Hitler and a dictator could rise in a matter of days if TV was used correctly. I believe it is possible. It is feasible to program an entire population to respond to specific words, images, vocal qualities, and body movements, gestures, and expressions are made with assurance. The consequences of such programming is a population mat that is highly suggestible, can be manipulated precisely. 11. Money's power. Conspiracies to seize power over the government are as old as the institution of government. Nothing happens accidentally in politics. If something happens, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, you can bet it was planned that way. During the last 2 centuries, the peoples of the world were gradually gaining political freedom from monarchies. The main banking families of Europe and America were reversing the trend by establishing new dynasties of international financial alliances helped to exert political control. The aim was to create a worldwide financial control system in order to dominate me. The global economy, as well as each country's political system. A wealthy family hierarchy reigns supreme in the United States. The families and family alliances maintain control over private wealth, which is reinforced by marriages among their members, which guide the banks and control the corporations. Historically, the government has served the private wealth. Politicians created the first fortunes in the New World. Land. The British and Dutch crowns granted trading privileges to favored individuals and companies. Every great fortune that emerged. The 19th century was characterized by fraud. In their absorbing passion for the accumulation of wealth, men were plundering the country like burglars looting a palace. The public has been misled concerning the material objectives of a few and the very existence of those who rule. The vast majority, money has become the ultimate means of rule. System for securing and maintaining power. Edward Bellamy, a 19th-century American author, was concerned with the extent and consequences of man's inhumanity toward man, describes how the term system is used in the water tank parable. There was a specific. The land was very dry, and the people were in desperate need of water. All they did was look. Many people died because they couldn't find water. However, there were some men in that land who were more cunning than others. They gathered supplies of water where others couldn't, and these men, they were referred to as capitalists. People came to the capitalists and begged for water, and the capitalists responded, "Be ye our servants, and ye shall have." So the capitalists organized the people and made a great. The water tank was called the market. The capitalists stated, "For every bucket of water that ye bring us, we will give you a penny, but for every bucket that we give you, you shall give us 2 pennies, and the difference will be our profit, because if it wasn't, we would not do this thing for this profit, and you would all perish." And after many days, the market's water tank overflowed. The capitalists said to the people, "Bring us no more water until the tank is empty." However, when the people no longer received pennies from the capitalists, they were unable to purchase any additional water. When the capitalists realized they had no more profit, they were troubled and said to themselves, "We must advertise." However, the people had no pennies to buy the water, so the situation was dubbed a crisis. The people's thirst was great, but the capitalists refused to give of water, saying business is business. But the capitalists were disturbed because people bought no more water, and thus they acquired no more profits. They then summoned soothsayers to interpret their predicament. Soothsayers were men who joined the capitalists so they could have water, and they spoke for the capitalists and fulfilled their requests. The soothsayers said that the people bought overproduction was cited as the reason for the lack of water, while others cited lack of confidence. The capitalists were comforted, so they sent soothsayers to the people who saw the hollowness of their wisdom and mocked them. Capitalists became afraid that people would come upon take the water out of the tank by force, so they brought forth certain holy men who were false priests to testify that this affliction was God sent them to heal their souls, and if they would bear it in patience and lust not after the water, nor bother the capitalists, it would come to pass that after they had passed away, they would to a place where there would be no capitalists, but plenty of water. When the capitalists realized that the people were still dissatisfied and would not be still, neither for the words of the soothsayers or the false priests, they came forth and wet their fingertips in the overflowing water from the tank and they scattered the drops onto the people, and the drops were known as charity, but there was still widespread unrest among the people. The capitalists sought out the mightiest, and all who were skilled in war, and they became a defense against capitalists, and after many days, the water low in the tank, because the capitalists squandered the water for their own amusement. When the capitalists realized the tank was empty, they declared, "The crisis has ended." They hired people to refill the market's tank and gave people a penny for each bucket they brought, and took 2 pennies. They gave the people 1 bucket for every one they gave them. 12. The ruling elite. World government. Benjamin Disraeli, the British Prime Minister in the 19th century, commented, "The world is governed by very different people than what is imagined by those who are not in the background." Dr. Carroll Quigley taught at Harvard, Princeton, and Georgetown's Foreign Service School University, wrote about the network of insiders who govern from behind scenes in tragedy and hope a history of the world in our time. I have studied this network for 20 years, so I am familiar with its operations. Years, and was granted access to its papers and secret instruments for 2 years in the early 1960s. I have objected in the past and recently. A few of its policies, notably its belief that England was an Atlantic instead of a European power and must be allied, or even federated with the United States and must remain isolated from Europe, but in general, the primary difference of opinion is that it wishes to remain unknown, while I believe its role in history is significant enough to be recognized. The political and economic power of the United States is concentrated in a ruling elite that controls most U.S.-based multinationals, corporations, major communications media, and the most powerful foundations, major private universities, and most public utilities. Founded in 1921, the Council of Foreign Relations was the primary link between the large corporations and the federal government. It's been called a school for statesmen and comes close to being an organ of what C. Wright Mills has called the power elite, a group of men with similar interests and outlooks. Events are shaped from invulnerable positions behind the scenes. The establishment of the United Nations was a council project, as were International Monetary Fund and World Bank. Members of the council include Henry Kissinger, Gerald R. Ford, Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale, Alexander Haig, George Shultz, and Caspar Weinberger. President Lyndon B. Johnson's council included 12 members. Senior Advisory Group for Vietnam, President Richard M. Nixon appointed over 110 council members to key government positions. Throughout his tenure, the majority of major appointments for the President Jimmy Carter appointed members to the State Department in 1977. Council, most CIA directors, including Vice, were council members. William Casey and President George Bush. Almost every major media outlet in the United States has ties with the council. The president of the country, Lane Kirkland, is a member of the nation's largest labor union, the AFL-CIO. Membership includes a high concentration of business leaders from such ITT, IBM, and Standard Oil are among the companies involved. David Rockefeller has been. Since 1949, he has served as a council director and chairman of the board since 1970. The council has been dubbed the establishment, the invisible government, and the Rockefeller Foreign Office. The council's goal: the formation of a world government. Cecil Rhodes, the gold and diamond magnate, has stated his commitment to in his first will, titled The Secret, Society will. His goal was clear: the expansion of British rule throughout the entire planet. The Round Table was a secret society that operated behind the scenes at the highest levels of the British government. Round Table groups were organized in nations under British dominion and, in the U.S., in New York, it was known as the Council of Foreign Relations. The Chicago Tribune's editorial on December 9, 1950, states, "The council members are people who are far above average. They wield power within their community. They have used the prestige that their wealth provides. Their social position and education have equipped them to lead this. The country is headed for bankruptcy and a military debacle. They ought to look at their hands. There is blood on them, the dried blood of the previous war and the fresh blood from the current one. Republican and Democratic administrations. Republicans come and go, but the Council on Foreign Relations endures. Both the Democratic and Republican parties are controlled by insiders. On the international level, there is a similar organization to the Council. This group, called the Bilderbergers, was founded by former Nazi SS Storm Trooper Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, called the most exclusive. The Bilderberg Group, a club of the Western establishment, includes some the world's most powerful financiers, industrialists, politicians, and every year, intellectuals gather for a conference on international affairs. Those Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister, attended. German leader Helmut Schmidt, France's Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, Henry Kissinger, Ford, Mondale, and Rockefeller. The ultimate goal of the Bilderberg Group is to establish a world government. Communism has always sought to establish a global government. The Bolshevik Revolution in November 1917 was a turning point in the world history. The main funders of the revolution, however, neither the eccentric Russian millionaires nor Lenin's armed bandits. The real money mostly came from certain British and American circles, which had long supported the Russians. In his book Tsarism and the Revolution Occurred, some of the world's richest and most powerful men funded the Bolshevik Revolution, a movement that claims to deprive these very men of their power and wealth. Men like the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Schiffs, Warburg, Morgan, Harriman, and Milner. In The Decline of the West, Oswald Spengler wrote, "There is no proletarian, not even a communist, movement that has not operated in the interests of money, in the direction indicated by money, and for the time being allowed by money, and that without the idealists among its leaders having the slightest suspicion of the fact." Descripting events at the 1968 SDS National Convention in the Strawberry Statement, notes from a college revolutionary, James Cunnan. Also at the convention, men from Business International sponsored roundtables, attempted to set up a few radicals. These men are the world's leading industrialists, convened to decide how we will live our lives. According to the 1936 Communist International Program, the world dictatorship can be established only by the victory of socialism in different countries or groups of countries, after which the proletarian republics will unite along federal lines with those that already exist, and this system would expand, eventually forming the world union of Soviet socialists. Republics. Socialism entails government ownership and/or control over the primary means of producing and distributing goods and services. State ownership and regulation of the entire economy imply government control over everything. Economic history has evolved in a straight line. Wealth consolidation is becoming more prevalent. This evolution flows from competition to combination, from large combination to colossal combination, and it flows on to socialism, the most colossal. A mix of everything. Communism denotes totalitarian socialism. Communism is a movement created and controlled by some of the world's most. To gain control of the world, powerful and wealthy men first. Establishing socialist governments in various countries, followed by combining them in a great merger to create an all-powerful socialist dictatorship. John predicted that before the great epic of millennial peace, humanity would be subjected to a ruthless global dictatorship that attempt to subdue all men to it or be killed. Revelation 13:15. He claimed that this dictatorship would compel men, both small and large, rich and poor, free and bound, to be identified with it. Revelation 13:16, unless a person be identified with its monopolistic control, no man might buy, sell. Revelation 13:17. Founded in 1944 during a United Nations monetary and financial conference at Bretton Woods. The International Monetary Fund is based in Woods, New Hampshire. Global economy. The International has its headquarters in Washington. The Monetary Fund promotes financial cooperation among nations and lends money to governments that must comply with the conditions before they loans are issued. The International Monetary Fund, which is dominated by Western nations, manipulates the economies of industrialized nations. Developing countries. The British economist Lord John Maynard Keynes envisioned it as the central World Bank, issuing currency and controlling the global economy. Founded in 1944, together with the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank lends billions of dollars for economic development projects in developing countries, which must first join the International Monetary Fund before being eligible for World Bank assistance. The Trilateral. David Rockefeller created the Commission, which is made up of an elite group of Western Europe's prominent business, political, and intellectual leaders. North America, as well as Japan. Members have included Jimmy Carter, Waiter, George Bush, and Mondale. The Commission was established in 1973 to promote centrally managed the global economy by the largest of the multinational corporations to bring about a new global order. Plato's Republic is the founding text of all dictatorships. Plato's blueprint for a new society begins by dismantling the existing social structure. Whatever means necessary, including force, in order to establish the ideal society. There would be three classes: the special ruling class, the powerful army, and the working class. There would be slaves too, but slaves would not considered citizens. Marriage would be repealed. Women would be equal to men, able to fight in wars and perform labor as men. The state would regulate and restrict sexual activity. There might be selective breeding of children who are considered inferior or crippled would be completely destroyed. People will be induced to believe falsehoods taught as religious principles. Myths would convey important truths to young people. Untrained minds. Religious institutions would be governed by a recognized. There is national authority. Priests would not have any authority over beliefs, but be officials whose job it is to perform rituals. The war would stop. When all states are united in a world state based on the principles, Plato has prescribed this, and Plato was willing to place the control of the state in the hands of just one man. Education as propaganda. All totalitarian movements are vitally concerned with indoctrination. The young, before rising to power, Mussolini and Hitler both organized youth. Power, because of this, popular culture, movies, television, and music. A general state education is very important. Plato recommended the censorship. Literature for schools and advocated control over poetry, music, painting. Architecture and sculpture. Dr. W.J. Spillman, former head of the Federal. According to the Farm Management Bureau of the Department of Agriculture. Letter to the New York Globe on March 28, 1919. 9 years ago I was. Mr. Rockefeller's agent approached him and stated that his object, the purpose of creating the General Education Board, was to gain control of educational institutions of the country so that all men employed in them might be right. John D. Rockefeller established the General Education Board in 1902. Standard Oil's founder, the General Education Board, was the first of the Rockefeller Foundations, influenced the development of American education. Rockefeller stated the objective, and Baptist minister, Rev. Frederick Taylor Gates, the guiding force in many Rockefeller's enterprises in the first publication of the General Education Board, Occasional Paper No. 1, in 1904. In our dreams we have limitless resources, and people yield with perfect docility to our molding hands. Current educational conventions fade from minds, and unhindered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon it. People in rural areas are grateful and responsive. We are not going to try to make these people. Any of their children can become philosophers, men of learning, or men of science. The task we set for ourselves is both very simple and very beautiful. 1. To train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life, just where they certainly are. So we will organize our children in a community and teach them to do perfectly what their fathers and mothers do in an imperfect way, in the home, in the shop, and on the farm. Young people are educated to prepare them for what comes next. Thus, the distinction between propaganda and education is eliminated. Education is required for effective propagandizing. The mind is conditioned with vast amounts of information masquerading as facts, and knowledge is dispensed for ulterior purposes. Recall the first principle. Distraction lies at the heart of mental programming. With propaganda, distraction focuses attention on false information, repetition of false information embeds it in your subconscious mind, so your acceptance of its truth and accuracy becomes a conditioned response, circumventing analysis. As a result, you unquestionably accept this information. Consider it. This is especially true at school, where there is pressure to accept what is presented as true because it is expected of you. Remember that your trust in the source of information determines whether or not accept it. Controlling information allows you to influence how people think. People can be led to believe something that is not true. An accepted authority provides information. 14. Communism. For years, the message has been repeated over and over. Communism is the enemy, and communism seeks to rule the world. This is a distraction to divert attention from what has actually been happening. True, communism seeks global dominance, but this is not the entire story. Since 1917, the Soviet Union has publicly and consistently advocated for the overthrow of Western governments. However, Western economic development has had a significant impact on Soviet development. Technology from Western companies. The technology transfer has been Western governments, particularly the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Italy, the penetration of Western companies and individuals engaged in early Soviet industry. Remarkable, writes Anthony C. Sutton in the 3-volume History Western Technology and Soviet Economic Development. In June 1944, W. Averell Harriman, the American ambassador to the Soviet Union, reported to State Department. Stalin praised the assistance rendered by the Before and during the war, the United States contributed to Soviet industry. He said, around 2/3 of all large industrial enterprises in the Soviet Union had been built with help or technical assistance from the United States. The Soviets have received Western technologies with military applications since 1917. The present, Sutton's primary research conclusion. The study states that Western technology has been, and continues to be, the most an important factor in Soviet economic development. Soviet dependence on the West has been largely ignored by the public due to propaganda efforts. Censorship and travel restrictions within the Soviet Union were designed to conceal massive technological transfers from the West as the primary explanation for Soviet economic and military growth. The Soviets. The West created Union, which is a Frankenstein monster. The first edition of the Communist Manifesto was printed in London. 1848. The first plank advocates the abolition of all private property. Owning. Many Americans dream of owning their own home is fading. As interest rates rise, home sales decline. The percentage of Americans that own. Since 1980, home prices have fallen. Foreclosures on homes and farms are obvious. Increasingly, large numbers of Americans are at risk. The family farms are rapidly fading into obscurity. More and more farmers are removing jobs from farm as the ownership of the means of production becomes more concentrate in industrialized superfarms. The second plank advocates for income taxes can be graduated or progressive. On October 3, 1913, Congress established the first income tax under the 16th Amendment to the Constitution. This would result in the implementation of Karl Marx's proposed graduated income tax. Earlier, attempts to impose a graduated income tax were declared unconstitutional. The Supreme Court made this decision. In 1902, the Chief Justice declared, "It is a method to enslave our people and deprive them of their liberty and the right to the fruit of their labors." The graduated income tax aimed to squeeze the middle class has disappeared. The fifth plank of the Communist Party Manifesto, centralization of credit in the hands of the state through a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. During December, the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law on February 22, 1913. When the President signs, this act will legalize the invisible government of money power. Congressman Charles A. Lindbergh, S.R., stated after the vote, the President appoints members of the Federal Reserve Board to terms are for 14 years. The Federal Reserve regulates the nation's money supply and interest rates and thus manipulate the entire economy, creating inflation or deflation, recession or boom. The stock market swings up and down at will. From now on, depressions will be scientifically created. Lindbergh made a comment. Congressmember Louis McFadden, chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee, stated that the crash of 1929 was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated event. The international bankers sought to create a condition of despair here, so that they may become the rulers of all of us. It is significant to note that not all banking in the Soviet Union was declared a state monopoly. Until December 14, 1917, the Sixth Plank proposes centralizing. The state controls the means of communication, even though, in a dictatorship, the government controls all forms of communication. The government does not have to own all means of communication, a concentration of ownership among the masses. The communication industry exists in the United States without mass. Without the media, there would be no effective propaganda to ensure the coordination. Propaganda possible, the media must be concentrated, the amount of news. Agencies reduced, and press, publishing, radio, television, and films. Monopolies were established only by concentrating in a few hands of. There can be orchestration and continuity to a large number of media. Propaganda, and using scientific methods to influence the public. Attitudes and behavior. Since then, the proportion of unmarried couples living together has more than tripled. 1970, a growing number of young adults live with their parents. In 1979, the number of divorces nearly tripled that of the previous 20 years. Years prior, white men, for the first time in American history, are minority in the nation's labor force, and the number of working women continuously increasing. The Communist Manifesto promotes the abolition. The family, Plato's plan for creating the ideal state, starts with dismantling the current social order. This is currently being completed through the manipulation of the economy and the communication media. Movies, TV, and music play a significant role in molding the minds of the young and untrained. In 1984, George Orwell forecast that the state would try to control the sex drive, specifically by using. Orgasm can be eliminated through psychological techniques. The rock video for Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood features pulsating light patterns as a visual. Distract presents a verbal program. Relax, don't do it whenever you want to go there. Relax, do not do it when you want to come. The lyrics are repeated several times to the music's pulsating beat. Repeating a light or sound pattern can induce a hypnotic state of mind, where you are most open to mental programming. Several rocks. Violence and sex are mixed in videos, television shows, and movies. The Friday the 13th series of films about a maniac who chops up teenagers during the summer camp depicts young people, particularly women, being punished for having a sexual encounter. JR from Dallas and Alexis from Dynasty treat sexuality in the same way they treat business, as a means to satisfy themselves and get the someone else deserves better. Television, movies, and music strongly influence the young people's social attitudes, breed disappointment in interpersonal relationships, foster hostility, suspicion, and sometimes contempt between men and women. All of this is to facilitate the elimination of the. Karl Marx and Plato proposed the family as a means of controlling individuals. A dictatorship. In 1984, personal relationships are replaced by political activism and loyalty to the state. The National Institute of Mental Health released a report in 1982 that stated, violence on television does cause aggressive behavior in children and teenagers who view the programs, according to the 1982 Nielsen report. On television, the average high school graduate has seen approximately 150,000. An estimated 25,000 people have died as a result of violent acts broadcast on television. Dr. Thomas Narut of the United States Naval Hospital at NATO headquarters in Naples has investigated the use of film in training servicemen who were not. To be able to do so, one must be willing to kill. Films were screened showing. To desensitize men to such, people are violently maimed or killed. Acts, an increasingly graphic portrayal of violence on television and movies desensitize viewers, especially young people, to real-life situations. Violence, and at the same time, older people become fearful and demand that something needs to be done. This is the same strategy used in the campaign. I'm opposed to marijuana. Marijuana consumption is encouraged among young people, as in the Cheech and Chong films, while older people are scared to demand more stringent legislation and penalties. Government propaganda targets the public. Demand what the government has already decided to do. Movies. Violence is frequently portrayed as acceptable, even laudable, on TV and in music. Behavior, and older people are scared into demanding tougher legislation. Penalties for the exact same behavior, bringing the country closer and closer to a legally constituted police state. A University of Massachusetts study of crime programs on television reveals that law enforcement officers routinely break and enter illegally and fail to inform suspects of their rights, terrorize and coerce witnesses, and commit bribery. Constitutional guarantees are seen as bothersome technicalities that impede police officers' ability to perform their duties. These programs undermine public support for the protections granted under the Bill of Rights. According to the study's authors, Professors Catch and Ahrens, police shows appear to reduce ordinary citizens' awareness of constitutional rights and obligations. Many people are interested in the drama of rapid fire action or preoccupied with violence fail to notice the blatant police state. Tactics. LT. Pete Coccaro of Metro-Dade County Police resigned from his position as technical advisor for the TV detective series Miami Vice. The second episode features a homicide detective roughs up a suspect, and two undercover cops allow informant may use drugs in their presence to subliminally suggest that those things are acceptable is unacceptable, Coccaro stated. Programs dealing with crime. Television has the political effect of softening up public opinion. Government propaganda directs public opinion to demand, or at the very least docilely, accept what the government has already decided. During the 1983-84, during its term, the Supreme Court significantly increased police powers and governmental authority while restricting individual rights, thus enacting law principles are similar to those presented on television crime shows. Thomas Jefferson believed that government governs best by least. The Founding Fathers thought that the primary goal of the government's purpose is to promote societal happiness. The framers of to achieve societal happiness, the Constitution established two basic guidelines. To ensure safety, liberty, and justice, power must not be concentrated, whether in individuals or institutions. Second, the ultimate power must reside with the individuals. All lawful governments are based on the consent of the people. One of the irreversible currents I've observed in 34 years of reporting is our leaders' desire to transform themselves from. Columnist Jack Anderson writes, "Servants become sovereigns." James Madison said, "The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, judicial in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may be rightly pronounced the very." The definition of tyranny, recognizing that the main threat to society, arbitrary, unrestrained, unaccountable power, the framers of the Constitution attempted to limit government so that it could not limit the liberties and rights of the people. Their device to achieve this goal was the separation of powers, so that no segment of the government could accumulate enough power to create a dictatorship. However, the sovereignty of the people has disintegrated due to a breakdown in the separation of powers. Power has consistently been centralized in the executive branch of the federal government. 15. The Bible and fundamentalism. President Reagan issued a proclamation declaring 1983 the year of the Bible, addressing the annual convention of the National Religious Broadcasters. On January 31, 1983, he stated, "Within the covers of that single book are all the answers to all the problems that we face today, if we'd only look." There, holding up a Bible, Rev. Jerry Falwell warns, "If a man vote for the candidate who believes in this book. If he doesn't, don't." Political and religion is inextricably linked in the United States. The Bible has exerted unrivaled influence in American culture, politics, and social life. There was a Bible study was once at the heart of public education. The Americans publish more Bibles than any other person. A Bible Belt exists exclusively in America. There are Bible camps, Bible colleges, Bible institutes, and Bible bookstores. The nation's battles were religious crusades, as preachers and politicians They used the Bible to justify their causes. The history of the Bible in America consists of there has been a history of conflicting interpretation. Slave owners and abolitionists, civil rights marchers, and others cited the Bible to support their cause. Segregationists in the 1960s. The entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation is God's inerrant word, and completely accurate in every way, says Jerry Falwell. Fundamentalists believe in the Bible as the ultimate authority in all matters, the revealed. The Word of God is inspired, infallible, and inerrant. They spread the word. According to the New Testament commandment, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." Religious programming. TV is taking over the airwaves, one of the major forces in religious. The Christian Broadcasting Network is a broadcasting outlet. This is the largest, the world's leading non-commercial broadcasting network. The 700 Club, hosted Pat Robertson, CBN founder, is seen all over the world. Jim Bakker hosts the PTL Club, a talk show with a format similar to Johnny Carson's The Tonight Show. There's also Jerry Falwell's Old Time Gospel Hour, Jimmy Swaggart, James Robison, Kenneth Copeland, and Old Timers. Rex Humbard, Billy Graham, and Oral Roberts. The newest entry, the Southern Baptist Convention's American Christian television system. TV evangelist Jimmy Swaggart has stated, "Your mind is the gateway to your spirit. The mind is where the battle takes place." The fundamentalist movement demonstrates mastery over propaganda and mind, control over its adherents and converts, because of their sense of mission. The fundamentalist movement is similar to previous totalitarian movements in that, turning political, economic, and social issues into a crusade. Its control machinery consists of a highly organized and well-funded political machine, a massive mass communications network, an independent Christian educational system, Bible studies, churches, and missionaries. Organizations. They believe that they have the ultimate truth, which been revealed through the Bible, and that their interpretation of Scripture constitutes the irrefutable will of God, stated former Senator Frank Church of Idaho. "We must obey the word of God," says Jerry Falwell. Do whatever he says. This is all there is to it. Repetition. The fundamentalist program is heavily based on Bible verses, and all thoughts, feelings, and actions are compared to it. As a result, everyone, the actions of believers, can be controlled and directed through scientific precision because of their obedience to an unquestionable mental program, prescribing boundaries for all human behavior. 16. Occult secret. Knowledge. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament strongly condemn any examining and exploring the occult. Remember, secret information is the fundamental source of all power. Ancient religious cults reserved a portion of their teachings for disclosure to a select few who were taught specific secrets. Doctrines, those inducted into the mysteries, were committed to strict secrecy. Ancient Egyptian mysteries were the key to gaining complete knowledge. This was preserved in the Hermetic writings of the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, an Egyptian prophet, describes the upward journey of the soul via higher spheres. The Kabbalah, a Hebrew mysticism that developed in the 12th and 13th centuries. France and Spain believed in an infinite God. Light from creation emanates through 10 successive spheres known as Sephiroth. Though man had separated himself from Sephiroth long ago, their divine attributes are still active in him, and he can return to the source of light. The Hermetic Kabbalist perspective on life is the belief in man's ability to harness natural forces from higher spheres. This is the Force in Star Wars, what was essential to all of the mysteries without the exception was the discovery of the true meaning of death. The concept of salvation is central to Orthodox Christian tradition. According to the New Testament, Christians are saved by grace, which is God's unmerited favor. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of themselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. Ephesians 2:1-9. The Last Judgment is also a fundamental doctrine, as it is appointed to men once to die, but after this the judgment. So Christ was once offered to bear man's sins, and unto those who look for he shall appear the second time without sin to salvation. Hebrews 9:27-28. The significance of these teachings is that they completely deny the doctrine of karma, states that your actions have an unavoidable impact on you, destiny in this life and in the next, and reincarnation, where many cycles, birth and death are required as a program of experience and learning in upward journey towards spiritual perfection and graduation from this a particular plane of existence. Reincarnation was formerly a part of biblical. I tried to teach, but was censored. The New Testament was not recorded for very long. After Jesus died, Christianity became the official religion of the Romans, the empire in the 3rd century. Various Gospels existed at the time. During the Council of Nicaea in AD 325, the current Bible was. A decision has been made. Those deemed unacceptable were destroyed. Only what was considered acceptable remained. Any changes, deletions, or additions made by church councils or the monarch, King James, would have a profound. The Bible's impact on the masses could be used to control or liberate them. In its campaign against heresy, the church destroyed most of the burning libraries to preserve ancient literature. What people think can. Information can be controlled. 17. Parapsychology. Parapsychology originated in the 19th century as a search for scientific proof of life after death. The field of parapsychology is concerned with mind-to-mind communication, telepathy, the ability to perceive hidden object and events, clairvoyance, and the ability to move objects by using mental power alone, psychokinesis. Psychic investigations were first organized in 1882, the London Society for Psychical Research and an American. 3 years later, society was established. First published in 1902, Human Personality. Frederick W. H. Myers' Survival of Bodily Death has been called a classic in the field of psychic research. Myers provides evidence for survival, bodily death, and communication with the dead from a huge number of in case histories. He mentioned instances where sleeping people were seen, other people, or they're waking from dreams with previously unknown information. He cited instances when my dead have seen and described by people who had never seen them before. Examples of telepathic communication and out-of-body experiences. He concluded that there is something in the physical body that can leave. This could be known as the soul or the spirit. Thomas Alva Edison was one of the greatest inventors in history, gave serious thought to creating a machine for interacting with the dead. 2 separate research teams, one in the US and the other in Germany, have developed electronic. They use devices that allow them to communicate with the deceased. This is unequivocal proof that there is life after death, says Dr. Ernst Sinkowski, a physics professor at the Technical College in Bingen, West Germany. The term parapsychology is classified within the CIA, as is any CIA report. Matt mentions psi, which refers to the entire spectrum of phenomena, it is automatically classified as top secret or higher. Many scientists think that parapsychology research can be used to influence the minds of others. In 1976, the CIA provided direct funding for parapsychology research. The director is George Bush. Much of the current research on ESP involves out-of-body experiences, especially remote viewing, the ability to leave one's physical body and travel to distant places. Representative Charles Rose of North Carolina, a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, has attended classified demonstrations of remote viewing organized by CIA. I've seen some incredible examples of remote viewing, so much so that we should pay close attention to developments in this field. Rep. Rose. 18. Drugs. Drugs, including LSD and marijuana, have been tested separately and in combination with hypnosis on knowing and unknowing subjects by the CIA and other government intelligence agencies to find trustworthy techniques for controlling the mind and human behavior, consciousness altering. Drugs have long played an important role in many religions. In the Vedas are holy books written in India between 2000 and 1400 BC. The god Shiva is said to have brought marijuana from the Himalayas for men's benefit. A liquid preparation called bhang was described in the 10th century as the food of gods. The African people and the Indians of South Americans have used a variety of psychoactive substances. Incas of Peru chewed the sacred coca leaves. The Indians in North America. It was thought that the visions produced by the plant drugs were glimpses of a world on a different plane of reality, inhabited by spirits that provided useful information. Almost every community in the world had its own medicine men. Witch doctors or shamans were chosen primarily for their ability to communicate with the spirits. Visiting the spirit world, the medicine man entered a state of trance, and this was frequently achieved with the help of pharmaceuticals. His role was to bring back useful information for his people. Historical evidence ties the use of certain plant drugs to the the ability to practice divination. Travelers, missionaries, and colonizers, administrators over the past century and a half, have relayed in letters countless stories of witch doctors accurately describe what was occurring in distant places, or correctly forecasting future events. Plant drugs have the potential to liberate psychic abilities in some people. As a result, they are targeted by both the church and the state. 19. The secret of marijuana. Marijuana has historically been used to treat a wide range of conditions. Disorders and conditions. Chinese Emperor Shen Nung categorized it in the herbal, an equivalent of the United States pharmacopoeia, as an important medicine. At around 2730 BC, and taught his people how to cultivate it. In the 15th, it was thought to have numerous medical benefits for centuries in India. Records from the 1500s show that English herbalists used it as folk healers in Poland, Russia, and Lithuania also practiced medicine. It was mentioned more frequently in medical texts during the 17th and 18th centuries. Between 1839 and 1900, there were more than 100 published studies. Marijuana as a medication. Potential medical applications include controlling cancer chemotherapy. Glaucoma treatment can cause nausea and vomiting. By reducing excessive pressure within the eye, management of muscle spasms, control of epileptic seizures, and asthma treatment by increasing diameter of the lungs' air passages, relief of pain, treatment of migraine, treatment of anorexia nervosa by increasing appetite, anxiety and sleep-inducing effects, depression treatment. Alcohol and opiate dependence are treated, and high blood pressure is reduced. The American Medical Association maintained a position on marijuana, closely related to the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. The Journal of the American Medical Association dismisses any study that does not show marijuana to be a threat. In 1967, the Committee on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence of the American Medical Association began by stating that cannabis, in most countries, marijuana has no known use in medical practice. Worldwide, including the United States, in 1937, members of the Committee on Legislative Activities of the American Medical Association wrote, protesting the impending Marijuana Tax Act. There is positively no evidence of the abuse of cannabis as a medicinal agent or to show that its medicinal use is leading to the development of cannabis addiction. In June 1980, the UNIMED pharmaceutical company filed to the FDA for approval to market THC. Marijuana's active component is known as marinol. The 1937 Marijuana Tax Act had a significant impact on prices for marijuana should be profitable to grow and distribute. In a situation, plant drugs can be commercialized and their use is encouraged. The Western countries' commercial interests encouraged the opium trade. Especially in the United Kingdom, the Committee for Opium of the League of Nations. The 1925 Geneva meeting was known as the Smugglers' Reunion. Governments are the real drug dealers. Harassment and prosecution are reserved for those who enter the field without authorization. You will remember that secret knowledge is the foundation of all power. The ruling elites arise and they keep their power through secret knowledge. Their power diminishes as then secret knowledge transforms into scientific knowledge and disappears. When it has become widely known, you are aware that information can controlled. You understand how people can be led to believe something that is not true, especially when the information is presented by an accepted and Respected authority. People keep secrets and lie because they are afraid. Something to conceal. Marijuana has a long history. Ceremonial use. In religion, among the peoples of Africa and South America. India. The Sufis, a mystical Islamic sect, continue to use cannabis in the traditional shamanist way to enter deeper levels of mind in order to gain access to useful information. Marijuana acts as a guide in psychic areas of the mind, which can be re-entered without it. The primary. The campaign against marijuana is motivated by the knowledge gained. Its proper use challenges fundamental Western beliefs, civilization, and the power and authority of the church and the state. Beliefs that we hold are frequently not questioned. When they are, it is relatively simple for us to lose sight of why we hold them, says The Social Animal by Elliot Aronson, a psychologist. Our beliefs frequently based on anything other than personal experience. Beliefs developed during childhood indoctrination at home, school, and church frequently masquerade knowledge. Such indoctrination entails the individual taking on. Instead of coming to his own conclusions, he relied on the opinions of others. We tend to protect what we believe and unconsciously filter out information we don't want. Receive. Most of us are programmed without realizing it. A child. He learns that conforming to what is expected of him increases his chances of having his needs met. Conformity is taught and encouraged by society and its institutions. Obedience to authority. This discourages the individual from developing the capacity to think for himself and discouraging any authorities face a serious challenge. 20. The origin of man. When Charles Darwin's Origin of Species was published in 1859, significant opposition to the whole idea of evolution because it challenged creation as told in the Bible. Even today, the debate rages. However, evolution and Darwinism do not mean the same thing, even. Despite this, they are frequently misunderstood as the same. Evolution is an change is an ongoing process. Life evolved over a very long period of time, which is a fact. Using evidence from geology, paleontology, molecular biology, and other various scientific disciplines. In contrast, Darwinism is a theory that aims to explain evolution, and despite numerous attempts, it has not been proven. Darwin. It was believed that new species evolved from existing ones, that fish evolved amphibians, reptiles, birds, and finally, man evolved from an ape-like ancestor as the result of gradually accumulated improvements. However, fossils showing important transitions from one. There has never been evidence of one life form influencing another. The fossil record frequently reveals an Darwin's gradual changes were replaced with a pattern of evolutionary leaps. Foresaw. The appearance of modern man on this planet was unexpected. Charles Darwin and the evolutionists discovered no missing link between man and ape because is not the evolutionary pinnacle of primates, the origin of man. Genesis provides an allegorical account of what occurred. Allegory is a method of describing something profound, something very simple. It is not the fact, but rather a symbolic representation of it itself. A literal interpretation of the allegory increases its. It is more important than what it was intended to represent. Fundamentalists commit this error. Both the Bible and evolutionists are incomplete. Explanation of man's origin. Adam is the anglicized form of Adamu, the Babylonian Sumerian designation for human species. Adamu referred to the human race. Adamu's nakedness reflected their lack of physical bodies. Man has arrived On this planet in spirit form from another planet system, for what they. You could learn something here. It was necessary for man to experience a finite world, dwell within the confines of materials, to know physical impositions in order to appreciate the lack of limitations and the responsibilities that come with it. I observed how organic species evolved, creating physical bodies by power of thought or by invading the bodies of animals. A group cohabited with the animal forms evolving on the planet and taught those practices to other individuals. The crossing of man's spirit with animals produced a race that hybrids, humans and animals became interchangeable. The Sphinx has the lion's body and human head represent this time period in human history. There were divine animals and beastly deities. The 18th chapter, verse 22-30 of Leviticus, refers to the period of Sodomic practices when man coexisted with other animal forms. The fall of the angels is referred to. The theologians were man's descent into flesh and spiritual degeneration. As a result, the process of reincarnation was required so that man could work his way back to his original condition and progress to greater achievement at its pinnacle. Why do you think that flesh developed a reasoning brain mechanism if not for increased employment, if you were rewarded in this single earthly life? According to your just deserts, flesh will surely defeat its mortal purpose. I'd like to remind you that you reap what you sow. What you have sown, not alone in one life, but in countless other lives whose formings are only memories. You've led uncountable lives, and the Spirit continues to hearken, and I will teach you as I taught the prophets. Observe and be wise, for it behooveth you to know that others have walked the path ahead of you, and would call to you now from the heights of their successes. Man comes and goes in his flesh in order to learn lessons from both his flesh and his spirit. Did I not tell men? Elias has already arrived, and they have not understood me, though I spoke of. What about John the Baptist? How I then spoke of John the Baptist as Elias came again. If the spirit does not go in and out of the flesh repeatedly, times plus one more, I ministered and instructed on this subject, but men's spirits were perverse in that generation, just as they were in yours. Say, he speaks to us of madness. Behold, I spoke no madness. I spoke in the truth, but they feared the truth just as much as they feared me who brought it. I delivered it to them. Arise and be wise, put off the ragged garment of ignorance, understand the secret of life's mystery. This version is condensed of information contained in Chapter 6 of the Golden Scripts, published Fellowship Press, Inc., of Noblesville, Indiana, as recorded by William Dudley Pelley. Lived in the 1930s. Pelley investigated the principles of survival and the human spirit and honed his psychic abilities. Body of work. The Golden Scripts were dictated to him. Know ye, beloved, that in the beginning man had no image through physical body, intellect was present. Men were created from the spirit. Know ye that? The intellect sought flesh for a purpose. Spirit as spirit has no identity, only spirit feels its essence after a long period of experience on material planes. Thus, identity emerges through trial and error, through life as mortal being. Man was divine since the beginning, a thought force of the Father. Knowing good and evil, no material thing is created without a loving purpose. I tell you, man was supposed to rule as God over systems of planets one day, to be under his control. Yet did man seize his opportunity to make himself the God of earth creation without gaining experience. Thus he filled. His thought forms have permeated the earth. What do you think the fable's meaning is? Of Sodom, he had monsters that he created. Whoredoms, he did bring about a terrible disaster for his species. Thus, he corrects a wrong through his fleshly visitations, so that by overcoming, he cleanses himself of the weaknesses and desires of his flesh, which they defiled him. Thus he has known earth life from eon to eon, form to form, body to body. Man is a mixture of indigenous ape forms and celestial beings who arrived on this planet and adopted the primate organic body because of the larger dexterity of the hand and thumb. They coexisted with me. Primate forms and their progeny were the first true humans. The inheritance animal traits still linger in man, making many spiritual beings beastly in their temperaments and behavior. Only with much instruction and experience in all stations of human life could man reclaim his original standards of celestial intelligence. Much of man's loss is inherent in him. Heritage, but he has been forbidden by thought forces superior to him. Use it until he has reached that time when he is spiritually balanced and developed that he can never again use his knowledge maliciously or selfishly. That time is quickly approaching. Ancient mystery religions taught that man possessed the ability to harness natural forces from higher spheres. This is the Force from Star Wars. A 1972 Defense Intelligence Agency study, initially classified top secret but released in 1978, concludes that the powers of the subconscious mind are far superior to those of the conscious. Consider your subconscious mind as your connection to the Force. Consider your conscious mind as the conduit for the Force's energy. The unleashing of this force within you is a mighty torrent. No human brain can encompass molecular energy of a speed and variation. In concept, it is force triumphant, striking him dead who has not the power to use it properly. 21. Mental powers. The great secret, possessed by the great men of all times, has been their ability to unleash the power of their subconscious mind. Your subconscious. What your conscious mind believes to be true is accepted by the mind. The subconscious acts on the beliefs held by the conscious mind. It works like this. Programming a computer. You feed data into a computer and the computer reacts to this. However, if the data you enter into the computer is incorrect, but it continues to act on it, if you give yourself inaccurate information, or if others give you incorrect information, and your memory banks, my subconscious mind does not correct my errors, rather it acts on them. The consciousness. My mind cannot be controlled by someone else's suggestions when suggestions contradict what you know from your own experience, but the subconscious mind is susceptible to suggestion by you and others. The subconscious mind can be manipulated without consciousness. The phenomenon of subliminal perception demonstrates awareness. The most effective way to protect yourself against subconscious manipulation is to be aware of how it operates. The methods used to enslave the mind are the same procedure was used to free it. This amounts to reprogramming my subconscious. The mind must overcome conditioning in order to function properly. To do this, you must understand the interaction between the conscious, the mind, and its subconscious. Meditation is a method of clearing your mind in preparation for a mental superior discipline. The principles that underpin meditation are distraction and repetition are the same as those used in mental programming. Distraction directs the conscious mind's attention to one or more, using the 5 senses to program the subconscious mind. Repetition of the mantra, a word, or focusing your attention on something The program is visually represented, whether real or imagined, tools of the conscious mind. Our words, spoken, written, and thought, as well as images and sounds. The conscious mind makes distinctions, evaluates, accepts, and rejects. The subconscious responds to suggestions made by the conscious mind. The power of suggestion equals the power of belief. It requires faith. Jesus said, "According to your faith be it unto you." Matthew 9:29. It is the foundation for all mental programming. Whatever ye shall ask, you will receive if you pray and believe. Think back to times when you were upset and without thinking. To calm down, you naturally began to breathe deeply and rapidly. Put yourself back together. Now, breathe in slowly and deeply and exhale in. In the same way, slowly and deeply, you're more relaxed. Patanjali is an Indian sage who codified yoga practice in the 2nd century AD, wrote that control over thoughts and emotions is linked to breathing control. Modern scientists are proving what old philosophers. Breathing has an impact on our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Dr. Rudolph Ballantyne of the Himalayan Institute. According to the Yoga Research Center in Pennsylvania, breathing is directly related. The internal organs function in a very strategic way. The emotions and mind. Changing how you breathe can change your brain works to give you conscious control over your blood pressure, metabolism, emotions, brain waves, and the mind. Now return to your early childhood experiences and imagine yourself as a tiny tot. Long before school age, even before you could speak, untouched. The adult world has left him unspoiled. Consider yourself as a tiny tot playing around. Frolicking through the tall grass is typical of outdoor life, as you enjoy the warmth of the sunshine pouring down on your face, across your forehead, cheeks, and eyelids, taking in this warmth as it permeates your body with a beautiful, peaceful, comfortable, warm feeling. Within, now breathe in slowly and deeply and exhale in the same way. Take it slowly and deeply as you gradually become conscious of your health. Rhythmic breathing pattern where you breathe in slowly and deeply in the healthiest possible way. You slow down your body functions and your mind because you're always in command. You're always in control of the healthy mental faculties are essential for maintaining perfect mental and physical health. Thus, you have a choice, and your intuitive level of the subconscious mind will only accept what it finds completely comfortable and acceptable for complete mental and physical health. Thus, you will not permit any one thing, any one person, any one environment, or any part of it to interfere with your choice and desire for perfect mental health. Body, thus, you keep complete communication between your conscious and subconscious mind to fulfill this health program and all these positive. From now on, you will set health goals for yourself. 22. Kali Yuga. In the book 1984, George Orwell warns that people are at risk of losing their freedom of mind without being aware of it while it occurs. Due to psychological engineering, this year is 1984. This is the time they put men's souls to the test. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country, but he who stands it now deserves both men and women's love and gratitude. Tyranny isn't easily conquered. However, we have this consolation with us, that the greater the conflict, the more glorious the victory. What we get for too little, we esteem too lightly, for it is only dearness that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price on its goods, and it would be unusual. Indeed, such a celestial article as freedom should not be highly rated. Your rebellious brother, who sought to make the earth's creation his, continues to work toward that goal, using the instruments of government to rule. Through money, art, education, organized religion, science, and technology. He intends to enslave his brother by shackling his mind, thereby attempting undermine his brother's birthright to knowledge. To Hindus and Buddhists, we approaching the end of a cycle, the Kali Yuga or Black Age, a time of turmoil, upheaval, and destruction. The legendary phoenix was sacred in ancient Egypt. After being consumed by fire, the bird rose again from the ashes. It represents immortality and resurrection, the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah, as predicted by John, is nearing. Life has decreed man to walk in darkness for a period of his days that he, through endurance, one may achieve godhood. Man has come to crossroads in his sojourn on this planet. He has come up from beast to sea. Majesty's eternal, he attains to his inheritance. Now I'm going to tell you. Approaching a crisis, that is my crisis. I have said that I am coming to men to show them the way to making a great peace. Lo, they do not wish peace. Their manufacturing ability would manifest itself in war. Man has found he is the tool of caprice in matters of material importance. These things. This will be changed. I say unto man, beware, you are not the creature of. You have caprice. Behold, you are heavenly, destined for eternity. Man hath arrived at the end of a cycle. He comes to account. I speak to him, saying, lest you destroy thyself, I prohibit abomination of art and science. I prohibit you from taking forces that are beyond thine understanding, and making instruments for the destruction of thy species. I give you benefits, and you do not use them wisely. Lo, withdraw them unless you are cautious. Improve your own spirit, lest benefits bestowed upon you are wrested from your hands. Man hath made himself Lord over matter and shaped it to his end. Lo, he has not made himself God of his own spirit. I came to him to tell him that unless he sees the light, and when he uses it, he becomes beastly again, going down rather than up. The world is at a crossroads. Don't make any more mistakes. Give up on your whims. Give up your intent. Always defraud your fellows by wreaking havoc on them for profit. Live peacefully, I tell you. Come into the legacy of thine inventions for the good of thy race and not for its injury. Follow not thine own conceits, but raise a standard for him who is Lord. The Father desired that man should learn lessons. He gave man his increase, and now he says to man, prove by your behavior that you have come to the anointment. Rise up and be clean that you may merit the treasure. The Father has clearly stated that increase comes to man, but only when he deserves it. 23. Conclusion. As reason departs, the world becomes more confused and chaotic. From men's ideas and actions, the outside world reflects the state of inner man. So long as there's a distinction between what life is and what, there will be conflict because men believe life should be a certain way, and conflicts are caused by what we think. The world's problems are caused by men believing false statements. A man can live well only if he understands what is the end of life, what things are of true value, and how they are to attained. If a man believes that the goal of life is to gain wealth and power, all his actions will be misdirected. What we are, where we came from, and why. We're here to talk about basic life questions. How we answer these questions directs the course of our lives, and within these questions is the reason for our existence. Here, men resent that which departs from what they have learned. Tradition, unless they make such a discovery on their own. Personal experience, to bring about a change in how men deal with one. Another requirement is that a change occur within the individual first. Inner change. Causes outward change. Something causes change. An event or series of events are taking place. Out-of-body experience is a natural occurrence. Everyone has it. Experience while asleep, and often while awake without realizing it. The conscious mind is completely aware of what is happening, while the physical body is asleep. Going on, but from a different point of view. Think about times when you've been in that twilight state where you're not asleep but still. Not completely awake. During this twilight state, you may have. I experienced the sensation of falling and awoke with a start, and may have. I also experienced some dizziness. Your spirit is located at this point. Realignment with your physical body. Private research has resulted in developing a motion picture, special effects process that uses the subliminal techniques and hypnotic suggestion to tap direct into the audience's nervous system to program the audience for the sensation of physical and mental separation, an out-of-body experience, while remaining fully conscious. Meditation and marijuana both produce altered states of consciousness. Physiological changes. Both are capable of releasing psychic abilities. Meditation, cannabis, and deep breathing exercises are the keys to kingdom. In the novel Lost Horizon, author James Hilton refers the practice of drug-taking and deep breathing exercises. It is the cause for the longevity of Shangri-La's High Lama. Artists often conceal significant. They provide information in their work. One more example is the film Dune. The spice melange that broadens consciousness, extends life, and allows guild navigators, fold, space, and slow time, which is a metaphor for marijuana. Over time, the drug causes evolutionary change. A meditation program, marijuana, and deep breathing exercises will also result in physical, emotional, psychological, and mental changes occur. I see no obvious impediments to humans giving birth to another species. According to paleontologist Dale Russell, National Museum of Natural Sciences of Canada, scientists believe man continues to evolve. The fossil record indicates that large-scale transformations can happen suddenly. Man approaches evolutionary change and the new man's appearance. The most awesome and profound knowledge awaits us, says James Westphal, professor of planetary sciences at the California Institute of Technology, and the most thrilling will be things we haven't imagined yet. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God. Was God, John 1:1, the Word is thought. Everything was created by. Without him, nothing was made. John 1:3. The answer to the age-old riddle of which came first, the chicken or the egg, is that the idea came first, followed by the thought. God is thought incarnate and creator, is a projection of that divine thought that wise and kind, old soul knows. In his final incarnation, Jesus communicated directly with the Father. The Creator is thought incarnate. Thought was the source of his power. He used means to perform miracles. Truly, verily, I say to you, he that believeth on me, the works I do will he do as well, and greater works than these are what he will do. 24. Postscript. In 1980, I got the results of 11 years of private research. Hypnotism is being investigated. Voice experiments were conducted. Language patterns as a means to induce various levels of the hypnotic state of mind. Language was used to create sounds by varying the inflection. Pacing helps to guide the listener from one altered state to the next. This was unfunded. Research resulted in the development of a mental programming tape. Assists the listener in identifying various levels of mind, entering them at will. They can continue to function for long periods of time. This programming tape had been used under medical supervision to facilitate behavior change and control pain, and aid in the treatment of a variety of lung diseases. I examined the tape, and other materials included books, notes, sound recordings, and music cassettes. Experiments were conducted, and the adventure began. The initial tests were carried out with the programming tape and other music and sound tapes, such as high and low frequency Tibetan bells, Hindu, Buddhist, and Islamic meditative chanting. However, some experiments were conducted with volunteers, and some sound experiments were carried out on unknown subjects. I experimented on myself and made. Take note of the effects. I experimented heavily with meditation and added to it is a routine of marijuana and deep breathing exercises, using marijuana, what I later discovered to be the traditional shamanistic method. Unusual, paranormal events occurred and were observed with objectivity and an open mind that reveals a different perspective on the world. I glanced at movies are different. I changed the way I listened to sounds. I studied the movies that were shown on 42nd Street in New York City. I observed the reactions of a loud and responsive audience. I worked the film industry in a variety of capacities for nearly 13 years, but primarily as an editor. I studied film at Boston University. I developed basic skills in sponsored films and worked in New York for more than 7 years, first for a documentary film company, then for a small independent, for a theatrical production and distribution company, as well as a video company. I exited New York to continue research, study, and develop a movie project based on the research findings. The process of creating special effects that resulted utilizes sound and light patterns, along with a subliminal mental program to cause the movie audience to experience physical and an out-of-body experience occurs when there is mental separation while still fully conscious. Support for such a project was not forthcoming, which prompted an investigation of the subliminal techniques are used in various communication media. Those findings. This document contains the following. It is not supposed to be complete, but representative of what's going on in America and around the world. Along with the research materials, I was given a copy of the Golden Scripts and the 12-volume Soulcraft books referenced in the footnotes. Soulcraft is a concerning the mystical history of man, the cosmic principles of the universe, the human soul's immortality, and the program of repeated existence. Also received a copy of The Occult, Technology of Power in Gary Allen's. Nobody would dare to call it a conspiracy. I started studying the conspiracy theory of history. The world is governed by very different personages than what Benjamin Disraeli once said, imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. As Prime Minister of England, he had the authority to know. Secret. Knowledge underpins all power. The ruling elite is where it is, because they know things that the rest of the population does not. They keep their power as long as their secret information is not revealed to those who are not part of it. Their greatest safeguard has been their ability to deceive They have made their presence known, but they have not evaded detection. They have been the subject of numerous books. The puzzle pieces are waiting to be fitted into place, revealing those who want to enslave their brother. Everything is determined by what you know and how reliable that knowledge is. It happens to you. Thus, it is only in your best interests to seek and understand the truth, no matter how unpleasant it may be. No real progress can be made made by man as an individual or man as a race, unless it is built on a strong foundation of truth and justice. A massive drama that began eons ago is reaching its climax. You are an essential part of this drama. Play your role with all honor and dignity. That is appropriate to your noble heritage. Seek truth and justice because they are important to you and future generations. Don't let future generations say it. That lesser things were more valuable to you.